Ladies and gentlemen, we are live here. I'm hoping that we are live. I'm just going to double check on my various social channels here, all over the internet. We are on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. At least we should be. And today we are talking about a really cool concept with my friend Hai from Eva. Um, Eva does a lot of PPC management and Amazon account management, so they're in position to answer the question of how do we measure the return on investment for our advertising dollars that we spend on Amazon. So we've come up with this concept called the TAS, the Total Advertising Score. We're going to plunge into that with Hai. So welcome back to the show, Hai. Good to have you back.
Thank you for having me, Michael. It's very exciting to be back in your show.
Yeah, it's always good to have you, and you always make my brain work because obviously you've got a background in artificial intelligence, which is why you created Eva. So just give us the 1 minute version of who you are and what Eva is and how it helps Amazon sellers, and then we'll get into this new concept.
Absolutely. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Eva, which is helping more than 1,000 Amazon brands, private labels for the last couple of years that we are active. And what we do is we are trying to maximize the profits of the brands. And by how we do it is by using artificial intelligence, advertising automation, dynamic pricing, replenishment forecasting, as well as reimbursements. So that's kind of like what we do. It's an all-in-one solution for a private label to be successful on Amazon.
So there's lots of complicated terms to unpack there, I think. But today we're talking specifically about PPC management, so on Amazon specifically, just to be clear. So you guys run a PPC agency and also, as well as the software, the Eva software. So I guess you've got an instant position because you've got this hyper intelligent software that you built, and also the sort of more hands-on day-to-day management piece that you're in a position to talk about this. So first of all, we've got another concept we're coming up with, total advertising score, as we're calling it. What is the difference between ACOS, TACOS, and this new metric? Let's define our terms. First of all, what's your understanding of ACOS in the Amazon advertising world? What's your definition?
Right. So, we are helping the Amazon sellers with PPC for almost more than a year now. And at the same time, we are developing the technologies. We are a technology and data company. We are developing the technology of the advertising automation as well to speed up the process and have much better results where the human intervention is always required, absolutely required. But there are a lot of repetitive tasks that can be done by the AI automation. So that's also clear. Now, one of the things
You
is
know what? Forgive me. I made a schoolboy error, and we started the live, and I've been so busy checking whether we're live, which we are, which is great,
okay.
that I forgot to record the podcast. So we better start that bit again, giving everybody who's watching live a good heads up of what we're going to be talking about. So sorry, that's like total amateur hour. I don't think I've ever done that before. It's because I'm checking all these live things. So if you've got any questions for us, guys, do put them in the chat, and we'll try and get to them if you're watching with us live. But if you are not, then we better record the podcast for you. So hi, I'm so sorry. Let's start again.
No worries at all.
Okay, so camera back to me. Hello. Thank you. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the 10K Collective podcast, the place to be for 6, 7, and 8-figure Amazon sellers. And today we are talking about a brand new concept in advertising management, which is called the Total Advertising Score, the TAS. New concept that we've cooked up over here. I'm talking today to Hai Mark, who is the founder and the CEO, I suppose, co-founder of Eva, which is a sort of automated system for managing everything, pricing, stock management, you name it, to really drive profitability on Amazon. And they've been managing PPC for quite a while now as well for a lot of brands on Amazon. So they're in a good position to talk to this. So hi, first of all, welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Michael. It's always great to be on your show.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. And you always make me think really hard because obviously you've got the kind of brain that can create not just software, but artificial intelligence. And a lot of people claim artificial intelligence. I know you've been in this field for over 2 decades, so you've got a very, very deep understanding. But today, I guess we're talking about a blend of the insights you see from the software that I know, what is it, over 1,000 private label sellers use these days, and also your more hands-on recent management experience with PPC. So let's talk about this first. What's the what is why do we need a new concept? Why do we need to look at PPC advertising in a different way, do you think?
Right. As you said, like more than thousands Amazon brands, private labels are using EVA right now. So we have a lot of data about the advertising as well as pricing, replenishment forecasting, reimbursement. So all this data is giving us some great outputs, like how to make advertising better, more optimized, focused on growth. And one of the things is like Amazon is trying to make more money on advertising, that's for sure. You know, like they already kind of announced $31 billion of profits, where the profit equals the revenue as it's 100% cash. And, that was also kind of showing that Amazon will try to definitely increase the 31 billion to 40 billion this year, as well as there will be more investments coming into the Amazon advertising space. So on the side of the private labels and brands, of course, like some of them are using some software or directly the Amazon advertising console or working with agencies. And the advertising is becoming more and more complicated every day. And there is all this two concepts, or actually it's a one concept of like ACOS and how can I keep my ACOS 25%, or how can I grow my business and optimize ACOS. So that's the kind of the thing that everybody's thinking about. But we think that it's not enough. Like we need to look at the customer journey as well as all the other parameters that are impacting advertising, like based on our studies and analysis of more than hundreds of like 100 brands that are working on Amazon. And these parameters are like inventory levels, profitability, sales velocity, price, because they are all impacting the performance of the campaign as well. There are
Okay.
some non-objective parameters, like the quality of a photo or the colors or the title. These are also kind of impacting, but there are also all the data available, which is already 99% of the stuff. So that's why we come with a new concept, which is the total advertising score.
Nice. Okay. So I understand why we need to look at the other things. So I guess one of the things you mentioned is ACOS. So let's first of all define our terms. Let's make sure we're super clear what we mean by ACOS, and then maybe what the other metrics are. So how do you define ACOS?
Even if we can, like when Amazon started, like they come up with the concept of ACOS, which is the advertising cost of sale. So basically you spend $1 on advertising, and if you are getting as a return $4, then the ACOS is 25%. So it's like what you spend divided by like what you get as a sales, and it's the ad sales. The original KPI there was ROAS or ROAS, which kind of like defined by the other players like Google and Facebook, which is the reverse of ACOS. So in this case, if $1 is spent and $4 is made, the ROAS will be 4 and the ACOS will be 25%. What's going on right now with advertising and Amazon is moving towards back to the ROAS. But a lot of Amazon sellers only talk about ACOS. I think over the time it will change. Everything will be more pretty much talking about the ROAS concept.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's true. That somehow, if you talk to Facebook agency owners we have for the podcast, for example, they always talk about ROAS. But presumably, both things they're both same two sides of the same coin, which is, I
Right.
guess, that you are spending, and this is a critical point to get. And forgive me if I'm saying really dumbly obvious stuff to a guy who's got the brain that can create artificial intelligence machines. But for those listening and myself, to make sure we're clear, we spend $1 on advertising and we get $4 in sales, driven only by the advertising, right? That's what
Right.
ACOS refers to. Now, for
Correct.
me, that's already incredibly flawed, because obviously the point about Amazon, unlike Google Ads in theory, is that the organic ranker on Amazon and the drivers of that come. Let me put this in clean English. Sorry, the every ad click especially if it's got a high click-through rate, and every ad-driven sale is going to help your organic ranking, right? So obviously we've got to account for that in some way, and I guess this is part of the point, right? This is the basic point number one that strikes me about ACOS as a terrible way of managing things. So for me, one of the metrics I like is called TACOS sometimes, total advertising cost of sales, or ATS, which again, talking about getting outside the Amazon bubble, is a very industry standard thing for decades, like advertising to sales ratio. So on product A, I spend $10,000 in advertising in a month, and I make 100,000 in sales, and therefore my advertising to sales ratio is 10%, 10,000 in ad spend divided by 100,000 in sales. Is that a metric that you think is better? And if so, why isn't that good enough to just use that?
No, that's a nice one. Let's kind of repeat just to make it really simple. Back to my example, like if $1 is spent on advertising and $4 of advertising related revenue is made, then the ACOS is 25%. But if the total revenue is $10, then the TACOS is 10%. Why? Because the TACOS is looking at the total revenue, where ACOS is, kind of like the parameter is there only the ad related revenue. Now, the problem is the ad related revenue is depending on other factors. So just by looking at ACOS and without understanding the other factors, what will happen is eventually you need to spend more in advertising. And that's what the Amazon sellers, the brands, private labels, they don't want to do that. For example, if you are out of stock, or if you are inbound or in transit, the level of advertising spend that you have will be very much depending on your inventory. Or if your price is not competitive, maybe you are overpriced, maybe you're underpriced, both kind of like situations will also impact your ACOS, because you're going to get more clicks, or maybe you're going to get more clicks but less conversions. So if you think about like all the other parameters, these are not reflected neither if you look at the ACOS nor if you look at just the TACOS, because TACOS is just about revenue. Well, what about the inventory, profitability, price, and the sales velocity, which are kind of impacting the wholesale situation? One of the things that we see is like there's a lot of PPC agencies, but they do not look at these other parameters that are impacting the performance of ACOS. There are a lot of automation software, which I call the stateless Amazon advertising software. And sorry that it's kind of a computer engineering term, but when I call it stateless, basically they just look at the previous state, which is what is my campaign spend versus impression, CTR, conversion, and etc. But then they do not look at the overall journey and the whole parameters that are also impacting the price. So they're kind of like stateless, like a fish memory AI. Like,
Yeah, stateless. That's a computing term for what I find a lot of software that I use. You know what? It relates to all kinds of things in any software, whatever that you use, that doesn't have much history and doesn't take account of history, if you like. And I think actually there's a phrase about history: those who don't remember history are condemned to repeat it. I think that applies to people more than computers, actually. But there is something about that if you start every day like a sheep or a fish, surprised by everything you see, then yeah, as you said, there's no learning from the past. So how do you begin to deal with this then? So okay, one way to deal with it is just hire an agency that you think is competent. But if you're trying to do this yourself and make sense of it yourself, and if you're going to hire an agency, I guess you need to understand what the process is that your agency is running, right? So how do we begin to actually put a number on the value of correct pricing, and how do we even deal with that? Let's talk about price first, because that's obviously critical, right? If you've got the price very high, you could spend a fortune on PPC, and if your conversion rate's 5%, 1 in 20 of the clicks going to convert. So you can very easily have a product priced at $30 and with $10 profit in it, and you think, great, that's much better than $20. But of course, if it takes you lots of clicks to make the sales, you're going to spend all your money on advertising. Equally, if you've got a product selling for $20 and it's making no profit, it doesn't matter how many clicks it takes to make a sale because you're all going to make a loss overall, right? So these are the extreme parameters. How do we begin to define the price piece, first of all, in relationship to advertising?
That's a great one. Definitely, like we can look at the total advertising score from two aspects. Number one is like the parameters like price that are impacting advertising. And number two is the overall customer journey, which is also not looked at very carefully. I'll come to that customer journey in a second, but let's start with the parameters that are impacting the overall advertising performance, and one of them is the price. So what we come up with Eva is we do the pricing dynamically because the demand is dynamic, right? Like every day there is different level of demand, and based on that, what we see is like as the pricing is done demand based and it is dynamically updated based on the demand, then it gives the best performance to the Amazon seller. We have seen, I mean, we are doing like dynamic pricing for more than maybe 600 customers. And typically in 15 to 20 days, we see at least a single digit, in some cases, up to 25% better profits. Why? Because the pricing is not done based on the demand, the trends, the category trends, the seasonality aspect. Well, obviously the price, the Amazon seller is updating the price. For example, if the inventory is low, updates the price by maybe 10% higher, or maybe there is inflation now in US, especially almost every day I'm feeling it, you know, the whole inflation impact. Then the prices, you know, can be manually always updated. But even if you have more than 10 SKUs, how realistic it is to update prices every day. What Eva is doing is like dynamically updating and finding the best pricing point for the product for the tomorrow's price. So it's always like finding the next day best price to maximize the profit. As we find the best price, the dynamic pricing also helps the overall revenue to increase and the overall profit to increase. And these are very important because while you are doing advertising, and if you're like so happy that, you know, you spend $1 and you make $5, so your ACOS is 20%. What if you're not making money? Like, what if there is no money, and each time you are selling, let's say you are losing $1. Okay, so let's have that assumption, which means that you are very happy. You have an ACOS of 20% because you are spending $1 and making that $5. But each sale, you are losing $1. Is this a great business model? Because you can always tell me, look, I'm like focused only on growth. And there are a lot of private labels and brands focused on growth. The question is, the more you scale, that won't really change your equation because you still need to pay all the fees like FBA fees, variable fees, your manufacturing fees. Pretty much they are a percentage of your overall sales. So maybe your price is, again, not the right price because you're not making any money. So you need to know that, and that needs to be dynamic, and that needs to be impacting your total advertising score, because neither TACOS or ACOS are telling you, for example, have you maximized, I mean, a couple of questions, right? Have you maximized your profit? Are you profitable? Do you have the best price today, and not for like yesterday or tomorrow, but is your price today the best? Is your inventory available? Is it out of stock? Is it inbound? Is it in transit? Is it available? I mean, and what's your velocity? Like, how many are you selling a day? Maybe let's say your tacos or tacos is 25%. Okay, we love it, but you only sold 3 items. So is this It is
Yeah,
really nice, you know,
not a
to have.
great success there unless you have an MOQ of 10,
So,
I guess. Yeah.
exactly. So if you look at it from a holistic point of view, if you look at the whole business, unfortunately, this ACOS is just telling you a parameter which is not really helping you to evaluate if advertising makes sense for you. So it's not about like 25%. It's about growing your profits. It's about always about how are you going to grow your profits.
Yep, I'm totally with you on that. Yeah, absolutely. As they say, I love that old saying, turnover is vanity. Turnover for Americans confused about the words sales or revenue. Profit sanity, cash is king, which is completely true. I mean, the value of the business in e-commerce is based on a multiple of profits. Unlike in your industry in SaaS, where you can have a multiple of revenue, which is kind of pretty cool, but that doesn't work for us in e-commerce. There is no value to the business without profits, and you certainly can't pay yourself either in revenue. Okay, so you got a few things that I'm thinking that we've got to take account of then. One is, let's deal with this simple thing first. Let's try and pick the easy wins out of this complex equation here. So one thing you mentioned is that revenue is not a good metric. I agree with that. So advertising cost of sales is really the advertising divided by the revenue, not the profit. So that's the first thing. And total advertising cost of sales, or ATS, advertising to sales ratio, is again advertising divided by sales, which is revenue, not profit. So how do we get our PPC return on investment sort of score related to profit first of all? How do we bring that into the equation?
Right. Let me talk about like how we calculate the total advertising score, and we'll be very happy to do that for any private label or brand that is watching us, and that will be done for free. So you know, you can they can always approach to Eva about the total advertising score. So there are two things that we look at. Number one is the parameters that we already discussed, like, you know, what's the revenue, what's the profit, the inventory levels, the sales velocity, as well as the price. So we need to look at all these parameters that we have data points about, like, you know, all of them. We already have the data points, and we need to be also all incorporating this into the total advertising score. Now, that's one side of the story. The second side of the story is the customer journey, which starts by, you know, how the customers start. They basically, there is first there's like 5 steps of a customer journey. Let's talk about that. And advertising in each step and the KPIs that you look at is also very different. Number one is the customer becomes aware of your product. Step 2, the customer starts considering your product. Number 3 is like purchasing your product. And number 4 is becoming an advocate of your product. And number 5 is like becoming a loyal customer to your product. So just to repeat it: awareness, consideration, purchase, advocacy, and loyalty. So if we look at, instead of, hey, my ACOS is 25%, but the point is like, is the customers aware of your product? Do they consider your product? Do they buy your product? Are they reviewing your product? And are they consistently buying your product? Are better questions than just to talk about, hey, my ACOS is 25%. I'm so happy. You know, it's not like that, because every single stage of the customer journey has different KPIs. For example, if we are talking about the awareness, maybe we are looking at impressions, click-through rate, which is CTR, the unique reach, the brand lift. And, you know, these are like great, you know, the great part is like Amazon advertising, because like Amazon is investing a lot of money into this. They're already giving you all these KPIs. Now, the thing is, like, if I start talking about for every single stage, 4 to 5 different KPIs, and let you as a user, you know, as the Amazon brand owner, to think about them, I think it will be very complicated. That's why we look at, as in the total advertising score, we look at all these different stages, and we look at every single KPI. for awareness, consideration, purchase, advocacy, and loyalty. And once we look at all the stages and how your brand is really doing, then it becomes more clear, obviously, which area is the one that we need to focus more. And each time it's like everybody's like, yeah, purchase. Like, I want more purchase. I want more clicks. And as like the purchase is the most important, but it's not, right? Because is it the new customers or the old customers? So the loyalty plays a role, advocacy plays a role, awareness plays a role. It's not just about the purchase decisions here. That's the only thing. It all depends. And then if you combine them with the external parameters to advertising, which you cannot find easily on the Amazon advertising, because these are kind of ignored, because the idea is like, push you to do more advertising, utilize the system, do more advertising. But you need to be aware, if you're really making money, if your inventory is there, if your velocity is good enough, and these are all impacting your advertising performance as well.
Okay, so lots to take on board there. I mean, the first thing is this is a traditional sort of marketing framework that I've heard before, but not very often in the Amazon world, because awareness, consideration, purchasing, advocacy, loyalty. I guess that, as you say correctly, as Amazon advertisers, Amazon sellers, we tend to go, yeah, show me the money. So I've spent money on advertising today. Can I get sales tomorrow? And I guess that the traditional Amazon product ads, very much are geared to that kind of direct response marketing, aren't they? Whereas the brand ads, in theory, are geared to the idea of more awareness, aren't they? Which, by the way, I think is potentially a good way to go broke if you just go for awareness and don't try and get the sales. So, tell me about brand lift, for example. What is that, and why does it matter, and how do we measure that on the Amazon system, particularly?
Right. So we can definitely talk about that one. But I just want to kind of mention another thing here. As we talked in the beginning, ACOS 25% or TACOS 10%. It's all kind of nice numbers, just thinking about the transaction, but it's not thinking about the growth. Like, how are you going to grow this brand revenue in a sustainable way? That's why you need a test, like a total advertising score, which is a score that we deliver between 0 to 100 based on, number one, all the external parameters that we review. Number two, all the customer journey that I talk about, so that's kind of important here. So one of the things, stage one, the awareness, obviously, Amazon has something kind of like a new called brand lift. We don't need to, talk too much about that, but it's a way of an easy, insightful, and privacy safe way for advertisers to quantify the impact of upper and mid funnel campaigns. For example, using the DSP, which is another important area, still not very much utilized, but using the DSP, you're able to get more customers from outside of Amazon into your listing. So that's kind of how the brand lift is kind of measured on the Amazon side.
Okay.
Mostly DSP related, which is not a very much utilized area of the PPC as well.
That's true. So tell me a bit, so brand awareness is one of those things which is obviously critical. If nobody knows you exist, they can't buy your stuff, right? To just put it in simple terms. But I guess impressions would give us that. Tell us a little bit about DSP. How practical is that for the average Amazon seller to use now? Because I know it used to be restricted to agencies or people who are willing to spend quite big, like $10,000, $25,000 a month. I heard different things at different stages. Where is DSP at these days for ordinary Amazon sellers?
I fully agree with you. So there are actually two things. Number one, the first thing to be done right is the total advertising score, which means you need to have the right PPC strategy first. and make sure that like the other parameters like price, profit, inventory, velocity plays a key role into the journey of like the whole awareness, consideration, purchasing, loyalty, advocacy, so we already combine these two and then create the total advertising score. Now it's more than 80, like between 0 to 100. If your advertising score is more than 80, and if your ACOS is 25%, probably it means that you have a healthy PPC, as well as your ACOS is low, but it's also like your products are set to growth, which you cannot understand by just the 25% ACOS, because you want to grow this business. The idea is not to optimize. The idea is always to grow and optimize together. That's also always a confusion. I have seen a lot of agencies asking the question, do you want to optimize? Do you want to grow? It's not like that, like nobody wants, like, you need to optimize and grow together. So it's not really happening, like completely separate, because it's kind of doesn't give the right way. Now, on top of that, another thing we consider with total advertising score is the DSP, which is basically like, what you can do to bring the outside traffic into Amazon. But you are right that it doesn't make sense, first of all, before figuring out the PPC in the right way. And the second, there are limitations about like who can use the DSP.
So what are the limitations these days for who can use the DSP?
Right. So Amazon DSP, like, I mean, obviously you as a brand, you can use that. And as an agency, you can use that too. I think that although there is kind of like a $10,000 ad spend was kind of like what we recommend. It can be that used even if you have less, but I think we can easily go for that. Like we should be talking about at least a $10,000 of an ad spend on the Amazon advertising monthly to be able to like leverage the DSP.
It's obviously a big chunk of cash for a lot of people. I mean, even if if you've got a business doing, so one of the clients the other day was talking about having an advertising budget of about 5%. So advertising to sales ratio, so about 5% of the sales, which for them was going to be maybe $100,000 a year, but that's on more or less about a 10 million, what was it? No, about 5 million a year run rate, something like that. So 10,000 sounds like a month. I mean, what do you get for your money if you're spending $10,000 a month on DSP? And remind us what DSP even means and how does that work for those who haven't come across that?
Right. So first of all, like there is also even a managed service option, like Amazon can manage DSP. There is a limit, which is $50,000. So like there's a lot of very large sellers who may want Amazon to manage that. I think DSP is a whole different concept that we should be taking into account. Maybe like have definitely another podcast around DSP.
Fun.
But
Yeah.
I would recommend that if our sellers are doing less than $10,000 spend on Amazon advertising, the key point is really to look at what is the total advertising score and try to try to grow your business. As your business grows, everybody will be happy, right? Because the 10,000 spent will go to 15,000.
Yeah.
Your ACOS will stay stable as long as your TAS is still 80 to 100. And if it is not, if your TAS is 50 and you're having an ACOS of 25% or 20%, probably like there is a suboptimal solution. It means that it's suboptimal. It's like optimized ACOS, but you're not growing because the whole business is not that healthy yet.
Yeah.
So that's important.
Reminds me of a couple of things. But let's talk about growing profitably then, or growth versus profit, or how do we combine them? A couple of thoughts that spring to mind. One is Jim Collins, in which one of his many books is it? I think it's Good to Great. It's not Good to Great. It's one of those ones. I can't remember which one it is now. which is about I've got a list on my wall here because I think it's so strategically important. That he talks about the 20-mile march. So successful companies that that have scaled in very difficult environments. For example, airlines. Almost every airline in America makes no profit, but Southwest Airlines has made profits consistently for, I don't know what, 40 years now. It keeps going, and they have made a mission to grow, as all successful businesses do, but to grow profitably every single year, but within parameters. Not too high, not too low. Is that the sort of approach that you advocate as an overall business strategy that this fits within, or what's your thoughts about that?
I mean, I think it's a great analogy. I like it very much. Everything on Amazon starts with knowing your data. And that's what we are really, really good at. By the way, I would like to give a very simple test to Amazon brands that are watching us about knowing your data. A lot of them are using at least one tool. I know that a lot of brand owners use more than one tool to check their ad spend, ad sales, profits in different platforms. So what I'm suggesting is like, go to the Amazon advertising console, check your advertising data for the last 10 days, and go and check your tool that you are using and see if they are matching. First of all, if it is not matching, you are using the wrong tool. The software providers, they always say, the data is not matching because Amazon API is not giving the right data, blah, blah. I don't agree with that. We are an Amazon partner. The data may not match, but the only reason is because there is sometimes a time delay, but it's not more than 1%. What I'm seeing with a lot of tools is they don't show the right data. So if the data is right, and that's very important, that you know, and you add the cost information to your software, because that's what Eva is for. So with Eva, you're able to manage all your costs and all your profits, because before knowing if you are profitable or not, it doesn't make sense. But then the data needs to be consistent in your tool, and it should be reflecting what you see on Amazon Seller Central or Amazon Advertising Console. But it's not it cannot be totally different. Well, unfortunately, that's the one thing that I see all the time with the software providers. They provided data as well as the Amazon data. So as soon as the data is right, you need to be profitable. That's the reason why you do this Amazon business, and you have to be. But if your task, the total advertising score is right, and if it is more than 80, there is no reason why you should be profitable, because if you're not, your task will not be more than 80 anyway.
Okay, so in other words, you only give a high score to businesses that are profitable and growing, by the sound of it. Is that right?
They are profitable, absolutely. And then it's not only about giving them a score, but the score is giving the owner, if the score is 60, then the business owner understands that there is a room to improve. And because we look at it not just by one single KPI, okay, A costs 25%, we look at it with the customer journey, and we look at it from the perspective of the other external parameters to advertising that are impacting the score. Then we are able to come up with really the right score, which also shows that there are improvement areas to grow. So
got it.
if there is no profit, there is a room to improve. Then we need to look at why there is no profit.
Yes.
And most of the time,
yeah, that's definitely something I would say to every business owner I've ever met who owns an Amazon business. If there is no profit, we need to look at that as a top screaming priority before we do anything else. I agree with that. And what is your? Let's give us some concrete examples here, because we're talking a lot of quite tricky abstractions. Give me some concrete examples of when you've looked at a client's account and sort of before and after story. So you've looked at it as low score. What's the problem and what are the solutions? Give me a couple of
right.
sort of
So
cases.
absolutely. Let me give you a couple of examples with all the different parameters that we'll look at, right? So number one is price. Most of the time, if the price is static, there is a missing opportunity for sure. Because if the price is always 19.99, and then people talk about, I want my customers to be loyal, and that's why I have the static price. It makes absolutely no sense in the e-commerce world. Your prices need to change based on the demand, based on the trends, based on the competitive SKU like ASINs that are competing with you. So there's always a missing opportunity if the dynamic pricing is not used. Number two is maybe there is a competitor which is priced, let's say, 10% lower, exactly the same product, and they are targeting your product too. And the more you invest into advertising, because your price is not competitive, you are not getting the results. And you can easily see that because you're getting maybe impressions, you see the awareness is there, but in terms of purchasing decisions, that is not there. So we are able to see that by how much, the price is competitive compared to all the others. And I'm always agreeing with the brand owners when they talk about like, my product is much better than the other. Well, I need to, again, look at the data, not your product, but like, what the data says about like, if the data is exactly the same with your competitor and is like priced competitively, that always creates a challenge, right? So inventory is another one. We have seen a lot of times like the inventory is inbound, but the campaigns are just spending the money. But the problem is when the inventory is inbound, the delivery dates are far away, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 week away from like a 2 days delivery. Now, when the customer adds the product to the cart and then sees the delivery date, 50% of them will not buy, because if there is another option that I can get tomorrow, then I'll be going for that option. But the problem is I already clicked, which means you already paid for advertising, but the cost of advertising is increasing because like a lot of people are not buying because the delivery time is delayed. So for example, what needs to be done is like to reduce because there's a dependency, the campaign budget needs to be lowered. The problem is a lot of this automation, this has to be done in an automated way because there is no other way, like you can just do it every day. And that's the reason why like the automation is required between the inventory and the advertising as well. So these are kind of like some practical reasons why all these parameters are impacting the overall advertising. Again, sales through the velocity, every day, how much you're selling. Maybe yesterday you sold 5, your ACOS is great, 25%, but actually you should be selling at least 25 or 30. So why did you sell less? I mean, that's also another kind of a reason to look at the sales velocity and to make sure that sales velocity is maximized before everything else. Because the more sales velocity you have, the more rankings you have. So there is like like the two things like fitting each other, right? So the most important thing in the e-commerce world is also like, of course, being profitable at the unit level, but then you want to sell more, like more, as many as you can, at least on Amazon, because it's not your handcrafted whatever the statue or something that's only like available 2 of them, and you are selling them on Etsy. Amazon means you need to sell massive amounts so that you make money. That's the most important. That's why I'm not talking about a percentage of the profit always, but it's more the profit itself, like how much you make every month, which is very much related to the velocity. So that's why it needs to be taken into consideration and maximized every day, which has something to do again with the demand and trend and the price.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess what you're saying is pretty simple focus, which is focus on absolute profit and don't stress too much about percentages. I mean, I guess the EBITDA percentage does affect the sellability of a business. So a lot of the aggregators want 20% EBITDA, But I guess, we can always re-engineer things in the year coming up to sale if you want a good trailing 12 months. But yeah, broadly speaking, you're right. Once you've got profit at unit level, you want to crank up the sales velocity. So obviously, lots of things that people need to take account of if they're trying to do this manually. For example, if you're having to manually adjust the bids or the budgets for multiple campaigns for just one product that is inbound, um, not available yet, and it's going to show up as you say, available in 3 weeks. That's a great way to lose a sale, which you've paid for the click for, absolutely. Um, then yeah, I can see why it becomes a management nightmare. I do know that one person I've got that I've worked with in the past has lots of SKUs, and they've got one person full time manually playing with the prices alone. But of course, that doesn't take account of the dynamic nature of the situation. You change the price, you change the conversion rate, that changes your advertising return, etc. Right? So obviously, Eva's there to solve some of that problem. And then you've also mentioned that you would do a free sort of total advertising score assessment for people. So tell us a bit about those two things if people want to check them out.
Sure, absolutely. So EVA is both the consulting services and technology. So we do the services, we basically end-to-end care the advertising. And the first thing that we want to do is like to always assess this total advertising score. It's primarily a 48 to 72 hours engagement. We spend a lot of time into doing this, but like the customer connects their store, we review it on EVA, we review all the data points and come up with a total advertising score, and then come up with suggestions how to improve that. And if the customer agrees, we just go ahead and do it. There is another thing that I really, really don't like in our industry with a lot of agencies and software providers. They are charging based on a percentage of ad sales. It's kind of like confusing me, really, I have to say. I understand the logic. I mean, I am doing like software as a service technology pricing for the last maybe 15 years. So I understand the logic. The problem is, if the agency is charging you a percentage of ad sales, then does it mean that the agency is trying to increase your ad sales? Like basically, the agency wants you to pay more into the ad spend so that they can make more money. Like, isn't it a bit of like a conflicting logic with the overall idea? And obviously, the agency needs to grow you, right? To grow your business. And if it is like a delta, for example, a delta profit that somebody is charging, I would understand it. Like, when I start, like you were making $10,000 profit and now you're making 15,000. So let's share the profit. Now I can understand that if I'm working with an agency. But if an agency says you were making $2,000, you were spending on ads, and now you're spending 3,000, and I'm going to charge you more because I need 4% or 3% of your revenue. Same thing with the software vendors. I think it's madness. I don't understand, like, what's the point of that? So another reason why we are doing this test, the total advertising score assessment, is we always come up with a fixed price to manage the advertising end to end, and it doesn't change for the period of time that we have a contract. Let's assume it's 4 months, 6 months, but it's always the same. So we are actually setting the scene. This is your profit, this is your task, and then every week we are always trying to improve that task. And that's what the essence of like what we are trying to do.
Yeah,
So,
that's
and
good
it's
to
a
know.
fixed price engagement. Like, it doesn't change because, like, hey, I mean, you are spending more money on ads, pay me more. What's the point? Like, we are still doing the same job. We are still doing the same optimization. The tools are still working in the same way. So why are we getting paid more or less? But it's mostly more. So, the kind of like percentage-based pricing models are discouraging the software vendors or the agencies to actually spend less on advertising. But in many cases, we even reduce the ACOS to down to 10% because it makes sense. Already there are so many different ways of selling the product. So why should we just like spend even 25% on an ACOS? Maybe. So
Yeah. So in other words, you're not incentivized to keep the ad spend going up, which it makes sense. Yeah, absolutely right. So if people, I know you got to, I've seen it yourself myself, and I know we went over this a couple of weeks ago. We looked at the PPC audit you guys do and sort of general audit of the accounts. Very detailed, I've got to say. It's very, very detailed. Is that something you do for free for everybody, or do they need a certain kind of qualification, like a certain level of revenue? How does that work?
Well, as long as they are interested in advertising and maybe they are doing there is no limit, but I would definitely recommend that every single brand should be doing advertising because Amazon is a pay per play platform. It's not the 10 years ago Amazon where you can have all this very nice, like, organic search, like the people who bought this product also bought that product. If you look at Amazon, like everything is like sponsored, sponsored, sponsored. It's like the Amazon land is already occupied by all the advertising, right? So it is inevitable. If you are starting your private label brand in 2 months, 3 months, you should be starting with advertising too, maybe even from the day one. Even, to be honest with you, I will start from day one because it will create the brand awareness. So as long as there is the budget and that makes sense that the brand is ready to spend a couple of $1,000s, that qualifies for the total advertising score assessment. But the more the brand spends, the more relevant it gets, right? Because if the spend is, we did it to a customer which is spending like $200,000 on advertising a month, and then it makes more sense because even like we are able to improve the task by 2 points, it may immediately impact not only the ACOS, but the profit by maybe 5%. So that's all becomes more relevant and more significant as the advertising spend grows, but it starts from day one. And we can do it for anyone, and then we can come up with a fixed price proposal to manage the whole advertising because it's really getting complicated. And these automation tools, which are stateless, let's say, I'm not trying to say they are artificially intelligent, but the intelligence level is very low because it's stateless machines, which kind of decides the campaigns based on the number of impressions divided by the CTR, blah, blah, that very simple rules that can be defined on these tools. And then they are also charging the agencies or the tools charging a percentage of ad sales. I think that's not the right way for this business to go. My recommendation for the brands is like, do your assessment, get your tasks, and get a fixed price, get a partner really to work with you to get your advertising done, and you grow with the advertising. But then the brand owner should really focus on getting the best pictures, best how to use your product videos, getting like the best customer experiences type of videos. Like the focus should be more on the brand value on the customer side and streamlining the supply chain versus like we can take care of the advertising and we'll make sure that the business is growing, but the test will be giving us the information, whether the inventory is right, whether the pricing is right, whether the profit is there. So that's also very important as well.
Excellent. So I'm going to just give a URL out for people if they want to follow it. So if you want to go and get this free PPC audit, it sounds like if people are really willing to spend a couple of thousand a month or more on ads, which unless you've got a titchy business, if you're doing over, I suppose you're into six figures a year, then you're probably potentially on the edge of that. So just go to amazingfba.com/PPC audit. Hopefully that's a reasonably memorable, easy to say, amazingfba.com/PPC audit. And we'll put a link there through to Hi's team, and they can you can go and put these guys through their paces. As I said, it's a very, very impressive output. So tell us a little bit about what we're going to, if you go for that, what people will actually get in concrete terms. I know it's a sort of couple of spreadsheets. You've got some recommendations, you've got a score. What else do people see on that audit?
Well, we always kind of like after doing that comprehensive study, we always come up with we do a call and we come with the recommendations. Like as you said, there is a report which comes with all types of the keywords, the where the keywords are, how they are helpful in terms of both organic and campaign management PPC, because I think these things are going hand in hand anyway. And we come up with a comprehensive report. We come up with the recommendations, and we come up with the next steps, like what we think we should do, we can do for the customer, basically. And it's a nice 1 hour review of the account, and it's all done for free.
Pretty good. Yeah. I always say to people that if they got a PPC agency that's willing to do that, just as I would say if they're thinking of selling their business, go talk to brokers or aggregators, people who might buy it. If somebody's willing to give you their expertise for free, you should go get that opinion. And you don't have to go and sign up with them afterwards if you don't feel that it's the right thing for you, but you should at least take advantage. So that is definitely something I would recommend. And for those who are interested in the Eva suite of products that doesn't do PPC, so just repricing, inventory management, and reimbursements, then they should go to, I think it was amazingfba.com/Eva is our link there. So if you want to check that out as well, I think pretty much everyone should be, by the sound of it, looking at dynamic pricing solutions. Again, you got to check things out. You can do a free trial. So if you're not managing your PPC well, or you know that you need some help, getting some expert input seems a very smart thing for me. Hi, very interesting stuff. Have you got time to give us one last bit of wisdom? What would your one thing be that you'd give people that we haven't covered today that they need to know about Amazon PPC?
So the advertising score, I think a lot of our customers, a lot of our listeners today, they don't know about their total advertising score. So if I were them, I would definitely approach Eva, so that we can do the assessment and we can come up with that test. I'm pretty sure that when they see how this test is calculated, that will be very impressive, and that will give them a great roadmap of like what needs to be improved to make the Amazon advertising more effective.
Excellent. That sounds like good advice. Again, amazingfba.com/PPC audit if you want to take advantage of that, folks. So thank you very much. It just remains for me to say hi, my co-founder, CEO of Eva.guru. Many, many thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael, for inviting me.
Great. So that's our podcast done. I'm just going to have a quick check of if we've got any questions on Restream. Where is even that? Here it is. Let me just have a quick look. Looks like we haven't got anything come through at the moment. So thank you very much for being with us. If you've been watching live or on the replay, if you've got any questions around PPC or any comments, do pop them in below. And I will come back to you, or we'll get Hi to pop in there. Thanks very much for being on the Amazing FBA channel and the 10K Collective channel.